Again, liberties. You know, like I say, you guys have given me quite a wide berth. You know, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes God speaks to me in weird ways. Sometimes it's in the mouth of other people. Sometimes it's on stuff that happens to me during a day or a week. And other times it may be what pops up on my phone. Let me show you what popped up on my phone this week that got my attention. So, Morgan, do you have that first one?
Leave for a few days due to vacation, so he used a special method to disappear in front of the otters. Unexpectedly, one of the otters became depressed because it couldn't find the man. The otter was afraid that the keeper wouldn't come back, so it began to cry secretly every day. It remained upset even when its companions came to comfort it. Even when other keepers fed it, it showed no interest. The otter lay there silently crying. This otter almost died in the wild and was rescued by this keeper. It had been raised by this keeper ever since. To the otter, the keeper was like its mother. On this day, the otter was lying listlessly by the pool when its companions ran over to tell it that the keeper was back. Immediately, it ran to where the keeper had disappeared, excitedly hugging the keeper's legs and refusing to let go. The keeper reached out his hands and it quickly climbed up. The keeper gently picked it up and reassured it that he wouldn't leave. However, out of fear, the otter continued to tightly hold on to the keeper's hands and crawled into his clothes.
I know it's weird. I know it's a stupid otter. It was so sad. It was so sad. His whole world left him, and he was sad. And it made me think that this next one, is this what I do when I'm sad? You have the other one? I think of weird things. Guys, seriously, that otter, there's a testimony in there. In that what we are so needing, what we so focus on is gone. We walk away from it, from Him. Sometimes we struggle with our walk. When we don't know what to do. And then too many times, like that stupid raccoon, it's not worth it, and we all just jump off. Guys, we may not be jumping off cars, but we wallow in self-pity. We wallow in situations where we can't handle them ourselves. Over the last several weeks, we've been talking about attitudes that really pull us away, or a focus away from God. How sometimes we get so busy. Martha, Martha, this is where you should be. We're like Martha, we get too busy. You know, and other times we get this situation in our life. We want this. God, I want to build the temple. God says, no, your son will do that, but I've got something better. We got to make that choice. Are we going to pout? Are we going to praise? You know, sometimes we worry about things that we have every day, that we know, that we come to church to sing about, to learn about, that we learned in Miss Becky class many years ago, that we just take for granted. Guys, here's the thing. Not everyone's going to go to heaven. And everyone can. But because we take things for granted, that there's plenty of time, that there's plenty of opportunity, that people will understand, that people will accept, they miss it. And then last week we talked about the entitlement. You know, how many times we think we just deserve it. Guys, that stupid otter got me thinking, sometimes self-pity eats us up. And I'm telling you right now, those three people that I asked for prayer for, any one of those people could go to a dark, dark place. Because we can put ourselves in their place, and we would struggle as well. Guys, pity. Self-pity. It's defined as excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness over one's own troubles. That's different from sadness. People are sad. By the way, we had a funeral here yesterday. Morgan and Anna Marie and I were here for a funeral. Does anyone here, and I need a show of hands, does anyone in here remember a lady by the name of Pat Stuckey? Thank you, Betty. You remember Pat Stuckey? Mike, do you remember Pat Stuckey? They had a picture of her as an organ player back in 1956, 57. She had moved from here to Oklahoma City, from Oklahoma City to Colorado. From Colorado, she retired and was living around family down in Houston. She passed away on June 30th, and they wanted her, I guess there's a lot of Stookies up in the cemetery, so they wanted to lay her to rest up there. And so we had just this little memorial service for her yesterday with the family that come. And we've had so many funerals here recently. Too many. And sadness is different than pity. You know what I'm saying? Sadness, there's a season for it. Solomon tells us in Ecclesiastes, right? There's a season for that. Self-pity, there's no season for that. That's wallowing in it. That's like that little otter whose little tongue is hanging out in the middle of the fence. Woe is me, my feeder is gone. My rescuer is gone. We wallow in it. It's like we're saying bad luck is all over us. Who remembers hee-haw? Besides Rhonda, I want everyone else to sing along. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Gloom, despair, 'tis agony on me. Thank you. Guys, I'm telling you, we walk around with that hee-haw mentality. We walk around with that woe is me mentality. I'm doomed, I'm unable, and this is what will kill a coach. When a player looks you in the eye or just naturally says, I can't. That's a crippler. That's a crippler. And as a faith-based body of believers, we better not be, I can't. He can. He can. The root cause of self-pity is when you take God out of the equation. When you say God doesn't care, or God's against me, or God can't. When you take God out of the equation. Let's look over at a pretty good story Jesus told. Look at Luke chapter 15, please. Luke 15. Hey, there's Jaden. Nice hair. About time for a haircut. That mullet's sweet. Luke chapter 15. Go to verse 11, and it's a story that Jesus told that we tell over and over. It's a parable of the prodigal son. Verse 11. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and he was filled with compassion for him and ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let's have a feast and celebrate it. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And so they began to celebrate. Guys, there's 2 sides of self-pity right there. There's 2 sides of self-pity. Number one, let's look at that first one. When you try to live life on your own. When you take God out of the equation. That boy, that younger son, went to his daddy, who had a little bit, and said, Dad, I want my share of the estate. Now, some of you that have studied this or heard this lesson taught in Sunday school or by a preacher that knows what he's talking about, you guys know that the younger son had no rights. Who had the rights? But he went to his daddy and said, I deserve this. How many times do we get in trouble when we say, I deserve this? You don't. Here's the next thing. He took it. The dad gave him the money. Dad gave him the money and he took it. He said, I can handle this. I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to go out on my own and I'm going to have a heyday happening time. And he was the life of the party. And it was so fun until it wasn't. Can you get an image of him? He was probably that cool kid for a while. For a while. But when your life is based on disposable things, stuff runs out. By the way, and this is just free advice, earthly things all have expiration dates. Earthly things. And if you're not made eternal by the blood of Jesus, you have an expiration date as well. Doubts started to sneak into this guy. Oh, I'm in trouble. I remember, if only this, if only that. Well, I can probably get it back. Have you ever tried that? I can probably work just a little bit harder over here. I could probably, when no one's looking, take care of things. I can probably start taking care of it and get some of this stuff back. But the problem about it is, there's always something else coming up and defeating you, kicking you, pushing you down. And then all of a sudden you start blaming. You start blaming others. You start saying life stinks. You start looking at everybody's at fault. And then you start looking at your fault and you say, I'm a failure. I can't, and I give up. Jonah is a great example of that, isn't he? Jonah, belly of the whale guy, Jesus said go, he didn't go, went the opposite direction, had to be thrown overboard, got swallowed by a great big fish, got thrown up on the beach, headed toward Nineveh, and it's kind of like, go. So he goes and he says, 40 days, turn or burn. And they turn. What God wanted to happen, happened. And he says, God, that's just why I didn't want to do it, because I knew you would do that. I wish, and literally he plopped himself under a shade bush or tree or leaf and said, I wish I would just die. My life is over. I think I should just die. He gave up. He gave up. Literally, he was a party to 120,000 Ninevians, stupid fish slappers, those Ninevians, and he was given the opportunity to evangelize, really, by the Word of God. Turn or burn. That's all he had to say. And they turned. And he gave up because he didn't get his wish. He didn't get what he wanted. I can't fight it any longer. You wallow in self-pity. When I hear the word wallow, you know what I think of? A pig in mud. A pig that wants to cover himself in mud because that's the only way he can get cool. A pig that can dig down and just kind of lay there and not do anything. No one wants to be around a pig, especially a pig covered in his own slop and mud. Winnie the Pooh, what was it, A.A. Milne? He wrote a story about a little boy who needed some friends. And as he needed some friends, he had Pooh Bear, and he had Tigger, he had Kanga, and he had Roo, and he had this stupid donkey named Eeyore. Nobody likes Eeyore. Everything always happens to Eeyore. Guys, we're a bunch of Eeyores sometimes when things don't go our way. And I'm not meaning to make light of it. I'm not trying to put a cartoon face on a devil problem. But I'm telling you right now, we all struggle with that. When we try life on our own, we end up in a dark place. And we might think a rain cloud's always coming over our head. But look, which verse is it? Because I highlighted it real big. Verse 17, I love this. When he came to his senses. When he came to his senses. Guys, I'm telling you right now, what does it take for you to come to your senses? What does it take for Quint, the thick-headed moron who's stubborn as all get out? What does it take for him to come to his senses? Guys, let me just tell you right now, you've got to come to your senses and say, my Father takes care of his servants better than I'm living right now. You got to see God for who he is. You got to see Jesus for what he did. You have to understand, when you come to your senses, you know that God's got a plan that's better than this. I could literally live in his house, and I could do his will, and he would take care of me. When he came to his senses, and then he said, what am I waiting for? Why am I waiting? There is nothing for me here. Self-pity is a dark place, and I need to get away from it. I need to leave these pigs. I need to leave this slop, and I need to go back home. I need to go back to my Father in heaven who loves me and gave Jesus for me. I need to get away from pity, self-pity. And it might mean I've got to give up some freedom. It might mean I need to give up what I think or thought was important in my life and really focus on what really is, who really is the important. I need to live unabandonedly. I'm not even sure if that's a word. But to sit here and to know that I lived with reckless abandon, I need to be structured and moving toward Jesus. I love this parable. I really do. And it's all because of this next part. Number one, we've got the whole concept of when I try to live life on my own, it's going to be dark. Number two, when I come to my senses, but this third one I absolutely love. The Father was watching for him. Not waiting, watching for him. Guys, that's a testimony. The image I have in this is personal to me. My dad would go off from time to time as a pipe fitter, and he would go off. And one time he went off to Pennsylvania, and he was gone for weeks. And I remember I was in my grandparents' bathroom where I could see outside to my grandparents' garage, and there was a sidewalk right there. And I'm washing my hands, and I look out, and I see my little 5'8", pot-bellied, bald-headed grandfather, who I love dearly, sprint from the back to the front. What's wrong? I get out there, and I run to the front door because something's wrong. And I see my 5'8", pot-bellied, bald-headed grandfather in the biggest bear hug of my 6'2", 300-pound dad. He's home. He's home. My son who was gone is home. He was watching for him. I don't know if he knew, if he called ahead or whatnot, but he saw him and he went to him. Jesus comes to us. He didn't say, be perfect and then try, Quint. He said, I know how you live. I know that you are a sinner, and because you're a sinner, you need me, and I will come to you. Jesus came to us. The Father was watching, and he ran to his son. He welcomed him home. He said, son, this is where you're supposed to be. And that boy, he humbled himself. And I'm not going to be King James or NIV or New American Standard. I'm going to just be Quint International Version. He said, Daddy, I'm sorry. You loved me, and I turned my back on you. Daddy, I just want to be home with you. I just want to be with you because that's where I'm loved. You're exactly what I need. My desire is to be near you. That's the remedy for self-pity. That really is. That's the remedy. James 4:8, come near to God and He will come near to you. Psalm 73:28, but as for me, it is good to be near God. I have made the sovereign Lord my refuge. Look over at Philippians, if you guys want to turn over there. There's 2 or 3 verses there, and it's going to end well, by the way. Philippians 4:11 through 13. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through Him that gives me strength. The remedy for self-pity is Christ. The remedy for that darkness in your life is the light of Jesus Christ. Too many times we try to do it on our own, just like that guy in the prodigal son. We try it ourselves without God. When will we come to our senses? When will we come back? When will we say, Daddy, I'm sorry? I tried it on my own and it didn't work. Dad, I tried it. I need to be near you because you'll care for me. You'll be what I need when I need it. Are you struggling with self-pity today? Are you struggling with sin today? Are you struggling with trying to do stuff yourself? Be your own solution. Jesus is watching, by the way. Not to catch you, but to welcome you home. God demonstrates His love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Whosoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. If you will confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. Guys, for God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. He has time and time again said, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. Dear sweet church family, self-pity will lead you dark. Christ gives you light, strength, and hope. Are you sharing that with other people? Are you believing it in your own life? How are you handling Jesus today? Saying, Daddy, I need you, or I'm going to try it on my own. Let's pray.